Hello, I chose to do my video on the Individuals with Disability Education Act. The Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA for short, was put into place to ensure that all children would have the right to a free, appropriate education regardless of their disability. This education needs to be tailored to fit their individual needs and be at the student's least restrictive environment. Under this act, all students will have access to special education and related services. There are 4 parts to this law. The first part is general provisions, which helps to describe the purpose of the Individuals with Disability Education Act and helps define terms that are used throughout the statutes. The second part of this law is assistance for all children with disabilities ages 3 through 21. This part of the law dives into how all students should be in their least restrictive environment. What this means is if a student can be in a general education classroom, that is where they should be. Modifications and accommodations can be put in place. Not all students should be in a self-contained classroom because they have disabilities. Part 3 of this law is for the infant and toddler population that are under 3, and it helps set up services to special early intervention programs. An IEP will be started for the child so that when they enter school, services will have already been started and the child will already be receiving those services. Part 4 of this law discusses resources and activities to help improve the lives of children in education if they have a disability. The historic and current perspective on this current law is the Individuals with Disability Education Act was created in 1975. It just had a different name. The name was Education of Handicapped Children's Act. The name of this act changed in 1990 to the current name. Before this act was enacted in 1975, children were denied educational opportunities because of their disability. The historical perspective of this law was that there was needed to be something in place to give children with disabilities a right to free education and services in the public school system. People saw that the children with disabilities were being forced out of schools and they had a right to education as well. The current perspective on the law is that children are being diagnosed now more than ever with disabilities. We know that children will thrive if they have an IEP in place with accommodations to help them succeed. We know that children should be learning in their least restrictive environment. This law is very much needed in our schools to help our children. I am a special education teacher and I work in a self-contained classroom with autistic children. So I can't imagine these children before this law was enacted, what their lives would be like. Strengths and weaknesses. Some strengths that come with the Individuals with Disability Education Act is that it created a process where students with disabilities could access a free and appropriate education. Services would be provided, and based on their IEP plan, students would have access to services to help them succeed in school. Without this law, children with disabilities may not have the skills and education to succeed as an adult in society. Another strength to this law is that there are procedural safeguards in place that require schools to stick to a child's IEP plan and make sure that they are receiving their services outlined in their IEP. Some weaknesses that come with this law include the amount of testing and time it takes to get a child on an IEP. Another weakness of this law is once a student has an IEP and a diagnosis, that is something that's going to follow them through their whole educational experience. They may have a hard time receiving services as they get older, depending on which district they are in and which services are available. This law affects schools by holding them accountable to help students with disabilities and their families form an educational plan and follow through with that plan. They are required by law to follow the IEP and provide services to those students. This law affects teaching by putting more responsibilities on teachers that work in general education classrooms. There also needs to be a special education teacher that participates in IEPs. This law affects learning by providing a plan that helps the student learn based on their disabilities and needs. Learning can be made easier when accommodations and modifications are put in place to help the student succeed. Once we determine how to best accommodate the student, learning can really begin. Thank you.